I live in Montreal, Canada. I have lived in Montreal for 23 years, but then before I went to university here for 4 years. So I have been in Montreal for a better part of my life.
Especially musicians, I find that like people will just assume you're in a different place. Like people just associate like a certain place with you because you spent like whatever like formative years there.
Yeah, exactly. But we have been here for forever. We settled here. It's a magical place. I don't know what happened. We're not French, um, but we don't really need to be because we travel the world doing our music. So we have children here. They go to French school. They speak French. They're Quebecois. Like it's pretty amazing. But we left Toronto, and I think that there was some hits maybe for our career with that.
It's been 20 years, but I wonder at this point how much location matters at the end of the day, just based on how kind of dispersed everything is already.
I mean, I think it matters. I think being in the room when things get decided or brought up or connections are made, we're not really a part of the industry here. It's a huge industry in Toronto with the music industry. So, I mean, my latest record that I'm putting out, I met J. McCarrol in Toronto. He's from Toronto. This record wouldn't be without Toronto. We met at a concert in Toronto, so I've been spending a lot more time in Toronto since the making of this album, which has been great. It's my childhood rearing time. So a lot of ghosts and a lot of corners, but I'm creating a lot of new stories there now.
Quebec, Montreal specifically has this like storied history of like indie bands especially have come out of there. How is it that the two of you have been there for close to 20 years. How have you not ingratiated yourselves into the scene?
Okay, well, that scene we are a part of. I mean, if you're going to talk about, yeah, absolutely.
Is there like a separate Francophile scene that I'm not thinking of?
No, I was thinking of it more like, oh, you should come down and guest spot on CBC as a radio host, or something like that. I'm thinking of it as it's like, oh, you should go and write for Beyonce. That's happening, like I have great connections of you should be helping write songs for other people, for instance, like that kind of connection happens, I think, over dinner parties and stuff like that.
So nobody's offered a Beyonce writing gig yet?
No, but that's a real Lowell who's from Toronto. Yeah, she wrote the Cowboy Carters or whatever, and she was we were on the same label from back before. So, no one has offered me to go into the room.
I wasn't saying it jokingly at all. It's you see these names pop up and it's kind of amazing. But I guess at the end of the day, if you can write a good pop song, that's all that really matters.
Exactly. And I feel like I can write a pretty good pop song. I don't know. I got a couple under my belt. But that was what was fun about making this record. Actually, it's my first solo record with a collaborator. And I think that just being able to write together was fun. It's more fun, less lonely.
So your first solo album with a collaborator. It's been a number of years since your last solo album, so it's really just bringing somebody else in to help kind of write and build the songs. That's the big difference between this and its predecessors.
Yes, I think there's no coincidence that the last solo record was 15 years ago, and I have a 14-year-old daughter. So I think that I had a lot more space and time to be by myself to write, and I lost a lot of that time. I chose not to take that time because I would rather have spent it with my kid. Stars and Broken Social Scene, and the thing that I couldn't fit in anymore was just taking the time to be by myself and write. And then I have two kids, so 14 and 8, and my child just turned 8. And there's something about turning 8 that really feels some people think postpartum lasts 7 years, and I kind of understand that. There's just something where they can like get dressed themselves, and there's just like a survival instinct that kicks in that you just know that they're going to be okay. I don't know what it is, but so I wanted to make a solo record. I didn't feel connected to my guitar. Like the pandemic, we were just talking about the global pandemic, and what a time, to be able to kind of like go into a room, and the guitar was across the room from me. I took it out. Like I was always made sure it was around. And
all these people who like wrote a novel and weren't just like balled up in the fetal position in the corner of the room, I just completely don't understand.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so it was not a very prolific time at all for me either. And then my guitar was like, "Oh, why did you play me? Like, what happened to our relationship?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't stop feeling it anymore. It's not you, it's me." So I was really kind of hoping that someone would just drop out of the sky and just hand me a bunch of beautiful music that I could write the lyrics for and the melodies and stuff like that. But I mean, Jay helped with melody too, but he just did. And then there he was.
This is something I'm always curious about with, especially with musicians who will have kids, but B, have a lot of projects. You said that you were prioritizing Brooklyn Social Scene and Stars over your own solo. Like, how does that, is there a specific hierarchy in your mind as far as what takes precedent?
Definitely. Stars is my wife. Um, Broken Social Scene is my mistress. And
Stars is literally your husband too.
yes, but he's also a Broken Social Scene. And he also helped me make this record that we just made together. So we're just tied to the hip a little bit. But I also, because I again, like the children just took precedence. Like it was a choice that I made. And Stars is its own machine. You know, I don't have to be in charge of Stars. All the music in Stars starts with Evan and Chris Seligman, Evan Cranley, my husband. So they are the beginnings of everything that you hear in Stars. It comes from them. So if you're handing me music, you know, I can get to it. But the having to kind of come up with it myself was the difficult part. And I just didn't, I wanted to spend as much time as I possibly could, because they grow very quickly, as they say, being with my children.
Were you sitting on a ball of were there music, were there songs, were there sketches that you had put down over the years?
I was working on some stuff. I had this idea. I wanted to do this whole witch project. And I was trying to write actually with no instruments, and I was just using my vocals to create like a wall of sound. But that it wasn't developing quick enough. And I I had so many feelings because I am going through this like time in my life where like I just, I turned 50. I only say my age in Spanish now since I turned 40 because it's so much.
Nobody in Quebec speaks Spanish.
No, but it's just that the English language,
it is nice, yeah.
The English language with numbers, it's like 40, like that's such an ugly sounding, but 40 is like, yeah, let's get with it. So I had a lot to say, and people were sending me songs, but they kept sending me songs, and I hear the music, I was like, oh, this is great, and then they'd start singing words, and I didn't want somebody else's words, and especially I didn't want man words. I just wanted to be able to articulate the things that I was moving through. And then that's why I got gifted this gem of a person who had all this music that he had been working on for 20 years, and his band had broken up. He was in a band called Brave Shores with his sister, but he's just a very prolific guy. I mean, he was a child prodigy. He was 5 years old. He could like play any music that he heard on TV. It started with like Young and the Restless. I think his grandparents were listening to or watching Young and the Restless, and that ding, 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 ding. And he kind of as a 5-year-old just like walked over the piano and knew how to play it. So he's constantly like putting out songs. And then when him and I met and I asked him to make the record with me, he then additionally started to write specifically for me.
In a certain sense, they are kind of they're half man songs, I guess.
Yes. But I don't think.
But we're talking about like subject matter? That's kind of the big breakdown, like the lyrical
I think
content.
Words are different. I work with a person who writes man words, and I love them, and he writes for me all the time, and I sing those words. And Torquil Campbell is an extremely extraordinary songwriter. So it's not about like the judgment of that. And music lives in a different world. Like I don't feel like music's gendered in that way. So. And I don't really think we have to gender anything. It was just that for me, it wasn't even matter if it was a woman or anybody. It was like I had stuff that I had to say. So to take it away from the gender a little bit, yeah, it was more that I had a lot to get off my chest.
Is it or can it be? I mean, obviously, we're talking about songwriters that you know quite well and have worked with a long time, but can it be hard to, I don't know, like inhabit those songs if they're coming from someone else?
No, it's one of my favorite things to do, actually. It's like I think I
Mhm.
started as an actor, as a young actor when I was 10. I was on Degrassi Junior High when I was 12, and I loved acting. When I got older and after I went to theater school, I just realized that it was a world that was going to be so difficult to have any autonomy, that you were constantly relying on other people for anything, a job, a good job you did well, or like, here's some money to pay you. It was just constantly in the hands of other people, like, oh, yeah, you were good. But we were kind of thinking more person with brown eyes. So, that kind of stuff that you never know, you have no control. So that's why really I pursued the path of music. But that's part of the thing that I love. And Torquil is also an actor. And so him and I being able to write for each other, and we have this couple that we've kind of made stories about since I first joined the band. So like Elevator Love Letter is a song that I wrote for us to sing together, and Your Ex Lover is Dead is a song that he wrote for us to write together, sing together. So I love getting into that kind of character on stage.
That's interesting. It reminds me of those Richard Linklater movies. You know, he did Before Sunrise and Before Sunset, and it's,
Exactly.
you this is obviously like one of the longest relationships that you've had with somebody, so you get to live and watch those characters evolve.
Exactly. And I've always wanted to turn it into something. Like we've tried to turn it into a theater show, and anyway, maybe it still will. But Midnight Coward, like so many of the songs that we sing together, is yeah, these where are they going to end up? I wonder. Ever happy? Probably not.
No, I don't think
No.
life works that way, but
But
I might be a little cynical. Does it start from a place that's closer to you, and has it just kind of diverged over the years, or was this just an entirely sort of separate character from you?
it's a s- it's a separate character because for my first one was Elevator Love Letter, and I'd always imagined this secretary or lawyer's assistant, and because the towers in downtown Toronto, their office lights never go out. And so my mother, for a hot second, lived in a condo downtown, and you were surrounded by light all the time, and they were just empty offices, and they never turned out the lights. And I thought, well, like, what if there was a secretary who worked there and then lived here? And so she was just going from one elevator to the other, and she could see her empty office from her apartment and how lonely she felt, and was kind of bringing home these men that she thought maybe that something would happen, but then she's choosing the men that also have the same kind of intimacy issues. Uh, so the kind of the ending of that song, "Don't go, say you'll stay, spend a lazy Sunday," to me is never actually said. It's only said inside of herself once he leaves. And he's saying it too, to himself.
It sounds like you were kind of alluding to, like, in a sense, these are characters that are just kind of trapped in amber forever, that they can't, and maybe it's because you only revisit them for so often. Maybe it's because it's just better fodder, as you said, working with damaged people, but they can't really reconcile, or like haven't been able to reconcile because of your relationship with them.
Well, I think for sure there is a place that it comes. Like, I think I have thought that that might be me, that I would end up always choosing the wrong person, and never being able to be vulnerable enough. So Midnight Coward is again about these two people from my perspective. And one of the lines is, I'll be the first to leave, meaning like, you'll never break up with me. Like, I'll pick up on it, and I'll be out of there. And that's definitely something that I have carried with me in my life, where if Evan and I would get a fight, I would be like, well, fine, then, like, we'll just break up. And he's like, why every time we get in a fight are we breaking up? Like, we can just have a fight. Oh, we can. Um, so I think that it also comes from a place of the fear that, maybe it won't last. It has, but, like I think the latest one was a Torquil written one, which is Snowy Owl on Capleton Hill. Capleton Hill, it's called. The song's called Capleton Hill. He makes things very confusing. Anyway, but a Snowy Owl is a very beautiful song, and it's kind of still about this couple trying to find their way to each other.
You said something in describing one of the songs from the new album that I think like fits in here perfectly about being in your 20s, about your 20s being a stupid time. And sorry, I'm going to like paraphrase you back to yourself, which I realize is annoying, but kissing all my friends to figure out which one was the one. Which, I mean, that's it, right? I mean, that's that period.
Exactly. It's exactly that period. And you know, I I didn't love being in my 20s. I kind of talk about this a lot, but I think people are born in age, and I was born 30. And my Evan is to me, and he's 8, and that's why he's been so good with our kids. Like he can play and play and play and play and play.
So it's a bit of a May December romance we're talking about here.
That's just gross. It's just in spirit, you know, and it's and so I'm sure you have one. I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm feeling it's like you might be in it right now. I feel like you might be just your age right now. I'm not getting teenager from you, but I don't know you that well. So like I have a friend who turned 50 recently, and I was telling her how it kind of really sent me on a rocky road, the whole road to that. And she was like, "Oh, I just love it." And I thought, "Oh, of course, because you are 50." So when I got to 30, the 20s were very challenging for me. I felt like a whirling dervish. I just felt like I couldn't be inside myself, and I was spinning around. And I mean, it was a fruitful time. And I joined Stars when I was 25. I was, started playing with Broken Social Scene when I was 27. I had been in a band before. I had written a ton of songs already that ended up on Honey from the Tomb. So, but it was just I didn't feel I was inside myself until my 30th birthday. I was on stage with Broken Social Scene with my 30th birthday, and it was amazing.
How does it feel differently? And how, I guess, how is it clear when somebody is like, as I think you put it, like in their age?
Well, think about Evan. I mean, if he's 8, he's pretty far from where his spirit age is. So we have to contend with all sorts of things throughout our life. And I think that, the people who are older in their spirit age, it's kind of like, it's just as difficult when you're away from it. Like I've always pictured Torque as 70, and that when he gets to that age, he's going to be like, "Oh, finally." Like it's this, so I don't know. It's just something I'm riffing on. Brian?
No, it is a funny thing. It is a funny thing. There are like, I very much agree, especially when for some reason, especially when it comes to like your 70s, that there are people who just thrive in their 70s.
Yeah. And I feel, because I feel 30, I feel so far away from that now that I'm 51. So that is so much about what the record is, and thinking about, well, I didn't love my 20s either. So, but I got through that, and I did so much in that time. And so what does that mean for what's going to happen next? But so it's just an interesting time because also when you're younger, you're so curious as to what's going to happen. And it happened. I had 2 kids. I have a house. I'm with the guy. So it's just now it's like, okay, well, what's the next chapter what do I want? Because I don't want the past 24 years. I'm not gonna have more kids, obviously. So it's just an interesting thing to keep curious and have wonder and keep open to what could be available.
I think that, again, this sort of connects to exactly what you're talking about in this new song on the new album. But your 20s especially is so much about just getting things out of your system, and doing things that you can't do, like whether it's professionally, for like me as a writer, just going home and like spending all my hours freelancing. That time goes away. You have family, you have kids, you get tired, and it's a time for you to really to try all of those things. And if you're lucky, you make it out alive.
Exactly. I mean, that's the first line of the song. The Overpass is the song we're talking about, is barely made it out of my 20s. And, you know, there could have been many different situations that I might not have gotten out of in that time. And definitely, I have become a much less dangerous person to myself than I
You
was
have to
at that
be. You
time.
have to be, especially when there are two like human lives that are depending on you to be so.
Yeah, which is kind of that's what I was seeking. I mean, not everybody seeks that, but for me, I definitely am better. Like they just actually left. I had the house for the first time ever, I think, for 3 days. I was alone in my own home, which is unheard of. Um, and of course, I was like, "Oh, I'm so excited! I'm gonna, just be come 20 again or whatever." But I definitely like. I think they're good for me. They're definitely keep me grounded and keep me focused. And yeah, there's some people that don't need that, but I definitely think that like they keep me present also.
And they literally keep you anchored to a place, which is very important for somebody who has been in bands their entire life.
But they've come along quite a bit. I've taken them, which has also been really fun. Like,
But at the end of the day, they need to come back. They need to go to school, and like you need to have this place that you kind of come back to, and it does create home in a way that you don't necessarily have when you're in your 20s and touring with two different rock bands.
exact. That's what I am so proud of. Actually, it's like my greatest accomplishment is making a home that everyone feels happy and safe in.
You're talking a little bit about being in this kind of, I guess, this pivotal moment. Part of it is just sort of the big round number, and I think everybody deals with that to a certain extent. We
Yeah. Well, I think I just no, because I get excited. No, no, I get excited because you're like everybody deals with it to some extent, and for sure, my whole friend group is kind of it's happening. We're all kind of going through it at the same time. We have all been friends since we were in some in high school, teenagers. We've been together for so long as a group of people, and I think that there's an important minute to say have a morning of your youth because it's over. I felt the switch at kind of 48 and I thought I realized that we are young old people and people kind of 47 and whatever whatever age you pick are old young people. So Jay McCarrol, who I made the record with, he's 41. And I was like, you are an old young person and I am a young old person. So I think you have to kind of take a minute to grieve youth. You know what I mean?
What's the distinction there? Young, old, and old, young. I know I'm asking you to get super specific on kind of abstract concepts, but I'm curious.
There's something about the middle, you're even you're past the middle, really. I mean, let's hope I live to 100, but 101, I mean, but so you can see the end more than you could ever before. Like, of course, mortality has been all part of my life and writing and art and music because my father was killed in a car accident when I was so young. So I was very aware of that, of mortality, but it really hit me for myself when I turned 50.
It's really interesting, yeah, as you said, Jay's a little bit younger than you are, but that in describing, I guess, kind of like working with him the first time that it reminded you of singing with your dad, which must have been just such a surreal thing, especially as somebody who has had like, obviously these like great musical and life partners in life. Like why was that so profoundly different?
I don't think it was. I think it was the same. I had just never been mature enough to realize what the feeling was because, I started singing really with Emily Haynes from Metric. We met when we were 15 years old, and she was already writing these incredibly complex, beautiful songs. And we went to an art school, and she would invite me into the practice rooms. We had these; it was such a luxury, really. We had these practice rooms with pianos, and this was a public school. This wasn't private.
Yeah, but it's a Canadian public school.
Yeah.
So so there's some support of the arts.
There was. I mean, it's getting harder and harder everywhere for that. But anyway, at the time, it was really a beautiful time to be at that school. It was called a typical school of the arts. And yeah, so I started singing with her, and I think that, like, you know, our connection, my connection to Emily, it begins there, and it begins with that singing, and I just didn't realize why I had always made it my life an arrow to get to that feeling. And it happened when I found the bluegrass people, Jenny Whiteley and Dan Whiteley, and it happened when I found Torquil and Kevin. I mean, it happened over and over and over again. It just hadn't happened in 20 years. Like, I have had the same collaborators. And so this was the first time it was somebody new. And then I was like, my body felt so weird. I was like, why am I having all these feelings? I don't understand what's happening. And part of it was panic. Part of it is panic because my dad was taken from me so violently and suddenly that it was like this just very confusing feeling of feeling at home, but feeling like I was in danger a little bit, because it could just go away. But these are rational things that took me a long time to figure out over the past 2 years when I started having all those feelings. But I went to work.
I think what you don't realize, because it's hard to recognize, I guess, like when a vacuum or an absence or I guess like negative space. It isn't until you hopefully encounter that thing again that you realize that it's been missing from your life for so long, especially in the case of like a 5-year-old who can't process things in the same way.
Yeah, and I don't even know. I really feel like that connection and that reaction, like this late, and I do think that it coincides with watching Evan father my children. Um, so my son is the exact same age as my brother was when my father died. He's 8, and my brother's older than me. And so I'm kind of like seeing a world in which I would have had or would have been in had he not been killed in the car accident. So, um, and then it coincided with this kind of singing thing that happened, chemistry, body reaction. Um, and I think that's like, I didn't process it until just this recently. Like, this record is me processing that time because I kept kind of dodging it, and it kept being kind of living in my body as a thing that was like, well, it was so long ago. I mean, how could you possibly still have feelings about it? But I think that what I learned is that uh, that grief is just a part of your footprint of your life. It's just a part of your makeup, and that it doesn't ever go away.
Maybe this relates to maybe I am in my age, or maybe this is a right time. But I've been noticing recently. Part of it, I was in New York City for the last 20 years. I was in Queens, and I just moved up to the Hudson Valley. So like I bought a house, and I kind of coincided with me getting a new job. And I've just been noticing these kinds of moments of symmetry from earlier in my life that caused you to maybe kind of re-examine things. And maybe, and I know it's only healthy to an extent, think about the what ifs, but maybe processing the what ifs helps you appreciate what actually transpired.
This is a kind of what I mean about mourning the youth, because part of that is how did I get here, and where could I have gone if I had done different things differently? And I don't know if do you know the great Hal Wilner? The great Hal Wilner. He's the music producer at Saturday Night Live, and he was just incredible. And he used to run these events where he would honor, like, Lou Reed, for instance, and have a bunch of different people come and play his songs when he was alive. And Hal Wilner passed away right at the top of the pandemic. And anyway, he's a wonderful man, and I met him through Kevin Drew. And I remember we were at a McCarrol, one of these things that was for Kate McCarrol, that we were singing her songs, and we were by the pool at the hotel, and he had his eyes closed, and he said, are you one of those people that has no regrets? And he's like, I'm not one of those people. I was like, how do we get to today? You know what I mean? How many regrets do I have today? Like, so interesting to to look at that and take stock of what happened.
That's such a beautiful thing too, because again, like this is kind of funny, but again, as I said, like having changed my job after having been in the same job for the last 9 years, and um, I was trying to figure out why I was so melancholy for a while, and you know, it kind of dawned on me. I was of course I was talking to my therapist when it dawned on me, but I was just like, oh, I've lost these two things that have defined me for so long, you know, and part like you live in a place like New York City, it that defines your life, and obviously like what you do for a living defines your life. So suddenly you're kind of wondering, when you pull away those things, what's left.
What jobs did you change to and from?
I'd been a journalist for the last 20 years. Like I'm still kind of in the world, but you know, obviously the industry was basically collapsing around me.
Hmm.
So, you know, I was able to make I think a positive lateral move, but so much of, I don't know, you know, I guess so much of the way that you approach what you do for a living, especially if you do something, you know, creative, or let me back this up. So, um, you know, you start, if you're doing the same thing that you've been doing since you were, you know, 20, which, you know, I mean, in essence, you are, it was something that came out of a certain time in your life, and certain, you associated certain feelings with it. And if there just aren't a lot of times in life to go back and kind of like re-examine how it's changed, and re-examine how your relationship to the art has changed.
I think that's really interesting because I was in crisis with the music industry, and
Mm.
Stars had put out Capleton Hill, and it didn't really go very well. And
But also, like, how can you not be, right? I mean, like publishing, it's
yeah,
just a nightmare.
it's true. It's true. But the work isn't, you know. I remember writing something that resonated with so many people on Instagram when the record came out, and I said it's a beautiful place when it's not a game. And it is. Like it continues to be beautiful if you can if you know, and that's so much beautiful work to be done, is like going macro, you know what I mean? Micro, like going small. Like that's how I just looked at this entire process of putting this album out. I didn't used to love the process so much. Because I was in crisis, I got a job. I was like, I'm going to go get a job, and I got a job. Then I found a job, and heaven knows I'm miserable now. Sorry, before I think of it. Anyway, and it was for a management company, and so I essentially would be working for musicians. And then I just thought, I'm not certain that that's what I'm supposed to do. And so I said, why don't you just take a minute before you take this job?
When are you talking? At what point in your life was that?
So this is 2020, the spring of
Okay.
2023. And so I
So
knew,
it's
like,
very recent.
it's very recent. Oh yeah, this is very recent. And Stars had been on tour, and the tour wasn't going very well. And I just felt like Stars hadn't stopped for 25 years. We just kept going and going and going, no matter how hard it was, and no matter how much it felt like somebody was saying, just, can you just stop for a second, take a breath? And so I thought, I can't do this anymore. I got to take time. And so I said, I want to take a year off of Stars. And so we had some shows in the summertime to do, because that's a great festival season. It's a way to, you know, have make some money and put it in the bank and get paid a little bit. And so we had some summer shows, and then the Hayden show was the last one on the books, where I met Jay McCarrol. That was going to be our last show for a year, and then this whole thing just happened. Like, so then I met Jay, and then the next day I asked him to make a record with me, and it's just I was like, because I stopped the thing, I'm also just lucky. Like it was just all luck. Like you know, it didn't. It all fell into my lap in this way that was like, so I didn't take the job, and then I decided to make a record, and then I went and found some money to make that record, and I hit a lot of green lights, and then
Mm.
so because I knew that I was about to leave and I was about to quit and I was about to do something completely different, but everything like landed for me to stay in music. I just really uh, felt grateful. Like whenever I started to struggle with lyric writing or if I was coming up against a wall, I was like, this is fun. Remember? This is so fun that you get to do this. Like, don't stress about it. Pick up a book, look out the window, like, and then it would just come back so quickly. Like I never put walls. I didn't put myself in my way, is basically what happened. I just enjoyed the process. And then this whole thing is like, everyone's like, oh, it's so crazy. It's so noisy. I'm like, I don't care. Small things, this conversation with you. Um, Kevin Drew said an amazing thing because I had like one moment where I was like, no one cares. And he goes, Amy, all that matters is that like one kid in Bulgaria hears the song and he puts the knife down. We don't know who we're reaching, but it's just about being in love with the work for me right now.
It's funny when you were talking Hal Winner, that's his name?
Hal Wilner, yeah.
Hal Wilner. When you were talking about Hal Wilner, you sort of stopped for a moment and you clarified, like with the Lou Reed thing specifically, that it happened while he was alive, and that's really that's an important piece of that puzzle. I keep bringing this back to changing my job, but like I changed my job and I kind of like announced that I was changing my job, and to me that's sort of the closest that I've had in recent memory to, in a positive way, attending your own funeral, of like people really kind of like coming out and being able to kind of like take stock of what you've done. And it sounds like that was one of the great powers in what he was offering.
I agree. And I think that's also a testament to my point of mourning your youth. I think like you as a grown up were like, this is not feasible anymore. It's not, I can't do this job. It's not working out for me. And so I'm going to be a grown up and I'm going to make a decision that's better for me and my future. And part of that transition is going from where you were young for so long. And you got to do that. You got to have your own funeral of your youth. To me, that is.
Had you gotten to the point where you feel like you were kind of taking some of this for granted because you had been doing it so long?
I don't know if I was taking it for granted. It wasn't going well. Like we weren't really making any money.
Yeah.
Nobody really heard about the record.
Yeah, it was really like pragmatic, like life things that happened.
Yeah, exactly. It was harder and harder to leave the kids. I hate leaving them. They're in school, so they can't come with us as much. It wasn't really about, it wasn't going well. So I wasn't, I shouldn't have felt good about what was happening. And what needed to happen was for it to stop. Like Stars had given us so much. Like I like to think of the bands as their own entities. And Stars has given the six of us so much of our life. I mean, it's taken me all over the world. And Stars was tired. And Stars needed to take a breath. Stars needed to just lie down for a minute. We're not going to we don't break up because we're family, and that's just the way we all are. We're very loyal, in love people with each other. So it's not about that. It was just about taking a moment to see what else might happen.
Yeah, but families break up, and oftentimes it is the people that you are closest to. And you did yourself kind of this dually difficult task of, again, being in two bands with somebody you're married to. And as somebody who until this point, because when I look at a lot of bands that have lasted the test of time, it's obviously it's very rare, and it's very rare to last that long with like essentially the core group of people. The way that they were able to do so is, because they took kind of time away from each other. But it sounds like you were able to sort of manage this and manage these long-term working relationships and friendships and romantic relationships in spite of that.
Well, I think that if we didn't take a break, we would have broken up. It's either like, let's call this a break or we're breaking up. So, but then this beautiful thing happened where Set Yourself on Fire turned 20. And so we ended up being able to kind of maintain some financial stability by playing this legacy record. And the pressure was off from having to kind of promote a new album. And it was really just a celebratory concert where people who have been so attached to this record for so long were able to come. So Stars took a break and we didn't do anything for a good 9 months, but then we didn't go back in the studio. Like we haven't gone back into the studio. We've just been celebrating our legacy, and it's been so much fun. We're just, the pressure is off of having to like, what is going to be the new for Stars, and let's just take a minute and just actually look back and see what we did.
That's really nice as a fan of music, and as a, well, at least when I was in the city, a frequent showgoer. It's nice to hear that, because obviously I've been to a lot of those anniversary shows, because a lot of those anniversary shows have, happened over the last like 10, 15 years. It's really become a thing. And you kind of, part of you worries, like, is this making that person miserable that they have to revisit this piece of music from 20 years ago? I know it's not quite the same as like having that one hit necessarily and playing it over and over again, but it's not everybody finds joy in playing the old songs.
I definitely was trepidatious about it. And we had our first show, was our hometown, was in Montreal. It was the first time we really was on the 20-year anniversary. And it was the first time we sold out Montreal in like a day. The tickets were gone, which was, quite a shock, and felt like that's positive. That's just bringing us to a positive, because I didn't know if I was going to love it. I wasn't certain. And then we got out on that. And then I remember we were all kind of in a bad mood, because we always get that in bad moods at hometown shows, because we're scared and we're nervous that we're going to blow it, and we're going to blow it in front of our whole community. And I remember we were backstage right before we played, and I was like, oh my God, we're doing it again. We're doing this thing we've done for 25 years where we're just underdogging ourselves, like in the worst way. And I just grabbed everybody and I was like, this is going to be amazing. We have gotten here, and let's just have fun. Like, it doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter if the keyboard breaks. It doesn't matter. We're just going to have fun and deal with it. Nothing, like, there's nothing bad that can happen here that matters. Everyone's here to have the best time of their lives. And it was one of the most beautiful shows I have ever experienced. And I felt that our whole thing, our whole ethos when we began, was to create a connection with the audience. And we did it. And not only that, but like when this record came out, we weren't that good. Like, it's been 20 years I've been playing the guitar and singing these songs, and like we've gotten much better as a band. So being able to honor Set Yourself on Fire by actually being quite good at playing it rather than when it first came out was also such a thing to celebrate, and was just so much fun. And the record was actually sequenced by Kevin Drew. We gave it to all the songs to him, and we never would have started the record with Your Ex-Lover Is Dead, I don't think. And it was just a brilliant sequence. And so being able to play that album from top to bottom in that sequence was also, it just tells such an arc of a story. And Kevin was brilliantly placed the songs where they go. And ending the night with Calendar Girl, where like we just drop all our instruments and the entire room sings it as a choir. It's very moving. I've been very moved by the whole experience.
I want to correct myself, because I feel like it wasn't entirely right that, that you had managed on for so long without taking breaks. And it's not entirely correct from the standpoint of like, I don't want to say the luxury, but like, you have another band, you have solo records, you have these other people that you have collaborated. As you said, you and Emily have known each other since you were teenagers. Just having the variety in there to work with different people and on different projects, that can play the role of taking a break, or at least, kind of removing some of whatever pressure has built up with that group of people. No? Okay.
Not emotionally for this group of people. Like, that's what I meant when I said that.
I guess because they're all, it's all the same people, right? It's a very, very incestuous couple of bands there.
It's not. They're very separate, actually. And Stars really was, we were a touring band before Broken Social Scene was. Like, we were really making that Night Songs album was done and finished before Social Scene was really even playing shows. And that's why I said at the beginning of the conversation that Stars is my wife. Like, we couldn't have conflicts. And it drove poor Kevin and Brendan crazy because, everybody was like that. Nobody could really metric Feist. We all had our own things going on and we would never fully commit to Broken Social Scene. We were committed to Stars. Stars was the focus. Stars was the most important thing. Stars was the life. And even if, whatever, would take some time off and then we were able to fit Broken Social Scene in there or fit an Amy Millian tour in there. We wrote a play together. Like, we didn't just stop with records. We in 2019, we spent 7 months making a play and then doing 6 shows a week in Toronto over almost a month. And then the pandemic happened. Then we wrote a television show all together that we tried to get made. Like, relentless stars. Because it is fun and it is beautiful, but it just wasn't. It wasn't working. And now it is. Now it is working. Now it's Set Yourself on Fire, and now we're just getting this new momentum. So it is working now.
Is there a part of you that it's like, well, let's strike while the iron's hot. Let's strike when things are going well. Let's, really like lean into this thing. Or I suppose your relationship with, work and your friend group just naturally has to evolve over time, regardless of what you do for a living.
I think, well, the music, I think I said this, I'm not sure, but the music of Stars always starts with Chris Seligman and Evan Cranley. They've written all the music. And so it's really up to them to start. Like, if they want to start making a new Stars record, it will begin with those two guys. It's their decision. And I think that everyone has benefited from this time, and just because it's such a different thing to psychically think about putting out a new product and what that means. And we already have 9 albums, under our belt. And like, what's going to be different? What are we going to bring this time? And so I think we're all meditating on that separately, and we'll see. And I just, I've got this album that I love, my solo album that I just made. And so I have a whole bunch of other songs ready to go with Jay as well. So we're still we're going to make a second record probably quite quickly. So I'm just happy to kind of put focus over in this part of my life where I can go on tour. Evan can stay at home. Someone can be at home with the kids. He goes on tour. He's joined a bunch of, he plays trombone. He plays every instrument. So he's been out with this guy Apache, and he's going to be deep into Broken Social Scene. I don't think we can both do the Broken shows. I'll probably jump in for some, but that's going to be his thing. Because he was really an original member. I kind of came on in a bit later, but he's the original guy. Cranley's Gonna Make It is on their first album.
It's striking me now that it's probably not necessarily that nice for Kevin and Drew specifically, but it's nice for everyone that's around them, that you can kind of like slot in and slot out of the band as your life determines.
Well, this is the interesting thing about bands being their own entities. So there's a Social Scene song called Band Witch, and it says, "My favorite band is a witch." And Broken Social Scene as an entity loves it. It's so fun. It's so fun to not know who's going to be there. And the core members are such monster musicians that it doesn't matter. And it's that controlled chaos that makes Social Scene such a special band to be a part of. I feel so lucky to have been able to get on stage with Feist and Emily and Charles Spear and all of them. They're just like such incredible musicians, and you never know who's going to show up. I mean, it might be Johnny Marr. That's what happened in Manchester.